Hey everybody, it's David, Day Drinking again here. Sorry, running a little behind. I've got a whole new setup down here. You can see all our bottles back. Oh, you can't see them. Back there. Woo, woo, woo. It's got a proper session today. We are tasting through a number of new exclusives. This sort of fun, weird, wonderful things that KLWines getting and nobody else. So no time to waste here. We had a fun little gin tasting this week, and now back to the old Scotch whiskey. We're going to start the session with the Tweeddale. This is an interesting brand. The guys who own the Raasay distillery, and they're doing some pretty unusual things in terms of they're sort of the stuff they're putting out before their whiskey is ready, the distillery whiskey. The company's called R&B Distillers. I have no idea what that's a reference to. This is their sort of single grain product. It's pretty unusual here. A blend of 50% wheat and barley distilled on a column still, of course, and finished in Oloroso. So it starts in bourbon, finishes in Oloroso. The Tweeddale brand was created initially in the 1800s, and it has been re-released by the great-grandson of the original proprietor, or actually the sort of second level proprietor. So the original owners, I'm blanking on their names here. Eventually, the one of their blenders took over the business, and it continued until the the World War II, when it was finally ramped down, and now it's back. So this is a single grain finished in Oloroso with a high barley content. It's unclear if these, I believe they must have been where if they were distilled specifically for this brand, or if the brand secured the stocks. It seems like the next one seems pretty specifically designed for the brand, but I may be wrong. We picked these up from the importer back east, so we're exclusive. Grain is kind of coming around these days. We have more and more interest in the category, and more interesting and high quality offerings. These are not expensive whiskeys, $45. No age statement, but they are non-chill filtered and no coloring, which is unusual these days for, I guess isn't really a big brand, but for new brands, even though you figure they would have gotten the message, so many people are just stuck to this idea that they need to worry about cloudiness in the bottle, and I guess there's some sense of that in the mass market. People don't necessarily understand why a Scotch might go cloudy for whatever reason. This is a very pretty nose. This is like apricots, tons of stone fruit. It's quite malty for a grain. I can't imagine this is, maybe it is a blend of, it says single grain. So it's one distillery, the recipe 50 wheat, 50 barley, bourbon barrels, finished in Oloroso. Great sweetness, great texture, very single grainy, not neutral at all. Can't really tell the age. I'm assuming there's some age on these. But obviously could be as young as 3 years. It certainly doesn't taste very young. Maybe it's that Oloroso finishing that's getting it going. With a little water, bring a little more dried fruit out. I actually like it better the first full strength, 46%, which is a good place for these. Alistair Day is the proprietor here. It's really very, very pretty. Super drinkable, very complex little grain whiskey, $45. Lovely little product that is. The next one is also a Tweeddale. It is the Grain of Truth again, but the peated edition. So instead of malted barley, we get peat dried malted barley. I don't know who's doing this. I didn't realize this was a thing. Again, maybe it is a proprietary blend created specifically for this brand. But to be perfect, I've just cut my nails now. I can't get these open. To be perfectly honest, I don't have that much information about where it's coming from, and I'm sure they're not allowed to tell us. So you can watch me struggle to open this here briefly. There we go. Where there's a will, there's a way. And so it's a pretty unusual thing. I've never come across a peated grain. Again, here we're single grain, non-chill filtered, no coloring. All great things we want to see. Looks lighter, so I imagine perhaps they haven't done this secondary Oloroso finish. Same price. God, that last one was pretty interesting. Very drinkable. Good summer whiskey. So I believe it's the same distillery. And let's give it a whirlsies here. Okay. Oh, something pretty unusual. Not your typical peated nose. What's he tasting right now? I am tasting the Tweeddale Grain of Truth peated edition. This is a single grain whiskey, single grain Scotch whiskey that was created pretty unusual here. Peated, a 50% peated malt and 50% wheat, distilled, of course, on a column still. Well, I assume that's how 99.999% of all the grain is created. Of course, you can make grain whiskey on pot stills, but it's far too expensive. This is unusual. The peat is very subtle. I was kind of expecting it to be more intense considering the light color and the young age. Its background is kind of in that diesel fumey, subtle sort of campfire, not campfire, more like camphor, like when when you're lighting a camp stove, like a little more classic fresh peat on the palate. 100 proof. I'm gonna see what some water does to this. Yeah, that's interesting. It's definitely peated, but it's kind of like this. If you're ever like, I just want something a little bit peaty, which is not really, there aren't too many that are just a little bit peaty. I mean, you have Oban, you have a couple like Dalwhinnie and Balvenie that are, very lightly peated, and after 10, 15, or 12, 15 years, you're not really sensing much peat at all. This definitely has the peat, but it's a background character, very unusual for a single grain. It likes the water, that's for sure. The water opens it up, adds sweetness, adds some of that that rich barley character. I'm going to switch my glasses for the next one. And then next, that's a fun whiskey. That's also, I think, $45. Something very unique. If you want to trip up a Scotch geek or just have something lightly peated without knocking your socks off, that's definitely one to look at. This is their sort of flagship. Alistair Day had planned to recreate his great-grandfather's, I think his great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather's original recipe. He had his blending book. He did all this research, and this is sort of what he expects would have been created given the component parts that are available to him. You know, when you're a blender, you actually have a lot of access to whiskeys that maybe the independent bottlers wouldn't, because there are people who want to sell whiskey, but they don't want you to necessarily profit off their distillery name and what have you. So if you tell them, hey, this is only going in a blend, maybe they're more willing to part with something special that, you know, they have small stocks of or doesn't make sense in their portfolio at that moment in time, but will eventually, you know, will represent pretty high quality. Again here, non-chill filtered, 28-year-old, the oldest Tweeddale blended to date, 51.8%. It doesn't say cask strength on it, but I assume it's very, very close to that. It is blended Scotch, so this is malt and grain. Single malt and single grain blended together becomes blended Scotch. It's got a lovely sort of color, and I'm sure the character is quite nice. Of course, 28 years is the youngest component, so I assume there's significantly older juice in here. Yeah, it definitely smells maltier than the last two. Probably pretty high proportion of malt here. Feels old. Woodsy. I wonder if they do a finish, maybe, like the others in the Oloroso. Big thumbs up to Gary Grunner or G Runner. Yeah, it's pretty, but it's not simple. You know, sometimes we expect these blends to be really straightforward. This has some, not peat, but some exotic flavors, some savory character, definitely some nuttiness. Don't really like that, almost like plasticine, like, not in a bad way. I don't know if that sounds bad, but let's try a little taste. Yeah. Wow. That's different. It's not like any of the other blended malts on the market. It's way drier. I mean, that high proof is obvious. I think a couple drops of water probably take this to the next level. It's got that exotic wood, hints of herbal qualities, not into the bitter flavors per se, but you know, a little angelica, a little, you know, little quinine-y hint, which balances the sweetness of the malt out front. That really opens up with a bit of water for sure. More fruit now. A little more like fresh tobacco. Definitely brings the malt forward. That likes the water a lot. Richer texture. Still dry. If you're looking for a sweet one, I would go to one of the other blends. This is nice, dry, high proof, old blend. You know, not inexpensive. Man, these people really want the Smoke Wagon. The Smoke Wagon, who knows? I don't know. Call Smoke Wagon. Let them know we want the whiskey. Not sure why it's taking so long. But it's coming. The next whiskey is the final in their chapter. This is kind of the flagship of the Raasay distillery. They are purchasing this from a Highland distiller and finishing it in Tuscan red wine barrels. Not a specific producer, but I assume, you know, this would be, you know, this is going to be French oak, red wine. So pretty, you know, pretty limited use of wine casks in Scotland. There are certainly some producers that really espouse it. Others who are more concerned. It's not, you know, pointed severely, but there's a nice dark color here. 46% again, lightly peated. This is a 2018 release, so we're a little behind here. And this brand, again, is only available at K&L in California. Not sure why any of the big distributors haven't come along to grab it. It's pretty, I think, interesting product line, but 'tis a weird world. Fun color, not too dark. You definitely get that French oak. That's right there. Toasty oak, vanilla, little hints of red fruit. The peat is not evident. A little bit medicinal. Maybe that's the peat coming through there. I wonder if it's, it seems it's Highland peater. There aren't too many. Thinking this might be like Ardmore, maybe. Ardmore's semi-available on the bulk market. Smells pretty good. There's the peatiness coming through. Good sweetness, not astringent. Always worried about astringency with the French oak, with the wine barrels. You got to be really, really careful with those. We've had a lot of sort of duds over the years. Whoa, what's going on with my hair? It's pretty wild today. Where we're tasting through a warehouse and you see a cool chateau, barrel of something cool, and you just really want it to work because it'll make a great story, but it just comes out either stanky or bitter or astringent. This is not those things. This is very well composed. The peat is really well integrated. I'm going to give it a couple drops of water, see what happens. Nice oily texture. That's the non-chill filtration coming through. No looshing whatsoever. Astringent is like bitterness, sharpness, which is, something we kind of want to avoid in our whiskey. For me, when I'm selecting a cask, the word that is always in my consciousness is balance, So I can make exceptions. If you taste like the Highland Park 12 year that we have, it's just a freaking monster. It is big, it's hard, it's powerful, it needs a little water to open up. It's sort of like the opposite of astringency. It could be like acidity too. You shouldn't really have too much acidity in whiskey, but astringency is definitely a negative flavor. There are of course great bitter flavors that are not negative, but I love bitter. I can smash Campari straight, especially vintage Campari. Thank you, Bex. But props to KL for not jacking up prices. That's what we're here for. Yeah, man, we're from what I can tell, the only ones, at least only ones with the, internet presence and a transparent system. Yeah. It as I was saying, it's all about balance for me. Because people's tastes vary so much, and we're really buying for a broad range of people. I think, when we're selecting a cask, obviously it's got, it's good to tell good from bad. In a warehouse setting, it's difficult to tell good from great, because it's usually cold. You're not in the right, so you can pick out the ones that, hey, this feels like it has potential. You got to take them back. You got to spend some time with them, figure out what's going on with the whiskey, because the whiskey is not singular. It changes. You change. The environment makes difference. The glass type makes a difference. Adding water, blah, blah, blah. But in general, the idea that I'm going for is balance. That said, sometimes things that are seemingly out of balance can still be delicious. So you don't want to totally discount something if it's too intense or too wild. Seems like a waste. So this is very balanced. The Raasay single malt. Ooh, that's not got anything in it. Single malt. There's the bottle. Finished in lightly peated Highland malt from a new distillery. The Isle of Raasay is famous for its illicit distillation, and they finally have a sorry, back. We really like that. Again, another nice, affordable, exclusive. Very tasty stuff. Okay, onward and upward. We're going to power through this next round. 3 really interesting whiskeys here. Back to single grain. This is a fun new brand, barrel to bottle. It's 3 friends, guys who've been selecting whiskeys for a decade or more for a couple of really cool private groups that, you know, we don't have access to because, of course, they're private, but they have inroads in some of the very best American distilleries. And this guy, Reed, Steve, and these guys, Reed, Steve, and Paul. Paul actually was the first to identify the excellent Encantada Lupibu whiskeys, brandies. Apologies, and you know which we had heard of but had never really considered. And he tasted them, and Kay and I'll end up bringing in 3 casks for their private group under the Brandy Brothers label for Encantada, and then of course that started our relationship with Encantada, and they have a connection to one of Scotland's big distillers, blenders, bottlers, which shall remain nameless, and they sort of, you know, said, hey, let's try and make single grain a thing. It's, you know, it's sort of in the American whiskey-ish family in terms of production, and their people gave them access that is pretty unusual, and that's you know, that's the thing about Scotch, is that it is really all about who you know the right guy, and suddenly you're in. So that's all the great bottlers back in, you know, small bottlers. Whenever you know, I get in front of these people and like, how did you get these casks? You know, my homie was was the comptroller at this or that company, and you know, if you know the right guys, you never know what can happen. So they selected 2 Invergordons, both 29 years old, in first fill ex-bourbon. Very rare for single grain to be in first fill barrels. They termed it as first refill Tennessee. So it's Jack Daniels. I said bourbon, but it's Tennessee whiskey, which is, you know, essentially bourbon in all but name. And these are bottled at cask strength with no coloring, of course. The 2 Invergordons are pretty distinct from each other, despite them being just distilled days apart. This is barrel 45981. Lots more rich woodsiness, sweetness, vanilla on the nose than most single grains. You know, typically single grain is pretty neutral on the oak front, gaining complexity through, what's the word? Concentration, evaporation through maturation. That is very, very delicious. Lots of sweetness, lots of spice. A little bit of water on these can help. This one's pretty dry and herbal compared to the other on the finish, but there's lots of sweetness at the front. I think this one is less bourbony, if that's what you're looking for, than the other cask. They're very, very similar looking, but they have quite a different character, surprisingly. With water, we add a little candied note, a little more spice, lots of clove, cinnamon. On to the next Invergordon. This is barrel number 45090, only 126 bottles worldwide. That was split between East and West Coast, and we're the exclusive for California. So we only had like 50 bottles of this. I mean, each of these are very, very limited. That's got a lot more bourbony on the nose. A lot more bourbony flavor on the nose, or aroma. More wood, more oak, more sweetness. One little taste with water, tiny little droplet. This gets a little more herbal with it, with water. Ooh, I like that. That one's pretty hot. That's like 57.9. You don't get it too much. Bourbon people like them hot usually. The third in this series is this, a Port Dundas. You can see the dark color. This is a sherry butt. Again, quite unusual and very unusual. Maybe it's first fill, but likely second fill. It'd be pretty weird to waste the first fill sherry butt on grain. They don't specify on the labels. It's, the distillers don't seem to actually take that information for these whiskeys, which is odd. Or maybe they have it, but they just don't want to share it. These are, this is cask number 312923, and it's 64.3% alcohol. Great nose. Lots of dried fruit. Little bit of like exotic wood. It's weird to have that sherry flavor without the malty backbone. It's kind of an unusual character. It's not like a sherry bomb, despite the dark color. It's not super dark. There's definitely influence there. Some woodsiness. Let's try it and then add a little water. Oh yeah, lots of nuttiness on the palate. Lots of rancio, almond paste, big classic sherry flavors. Again, singular without that malt behind it. A little bit of water, see what happens. It's weirdly soft at 64% alcohol, like uncomfortably easy to drink. So danger. And these are not the least expensive single grains out there, but I think they represent a quality level that's not really attainable in the price point. We have a lot of great single grains. We sell, a third fill Cameron Bridge and sherry for $80, but it didn't have this intense character to it. It is great. Buy it. It's awesome. And what's cool about these guys, they're kind of a guinea pig. If we can get through these whiskeys, there's no telling what they'll have access to. And they're very, very high quality whiskeys. I mean, these are selected by guys who helped build the Willett name. These are real, real amateurs in the, the classic sense of the word. In the way of like an Olympic athlete is an amateur. So those are really, really fun, and I think need to, wow, that gets bigger and spicier with water. Those need to be, considered by everybody. Next, we're moving on to the Moonrose. 4 awesome small batch bottlings. Little bit of a sad story. Gentleman got behind the brand, importer, back in 2017, and unfortunately passed away. And the products sort of sat in a warehouse in New York for many years, and one of our suppliers came across them and, offered them to us at a very, very advantageous rate. These aren't like your big sherry bombs. They're not super over the top in any way, but they are just really good values for mature Speyside malts, for small batch whiskeys. I don't have the exact details on them, but in terms of like how many casks were in each batch, I'm trying to get that. But they've got some good detail on here. This is 22-year-old Tormore in Hogshead, American Oaks Hogshead. All the Moonrose, yes, the Lechig is all gone, Brett. I'm so sorry. It's pretty good stuff, but these are excellent too, and there'll be more Lechig coming down the road, we're hoping. So this brand, I you know, it should be much more expensive, but we've got some really special pricing. The 4 distilleries in question here, Tormore, which is not a very old distillery. I think it was built in the 50s. It's one of Speyside's most distinctive. It has this incredible copper roof. So you drive by and it's just like it kind of comes out of nowhere, and you just come across this beautiful white building with this bright green roof. And the whiskeys, you know, we've tasted a couple on here before. The whiskeys are generally pretty high quality. I'm going to start with the Tormore here. 22-year-old American oak hoggy, distilled on the 9th of August 1995 and bottled the 30th of October 2017. Non-chill filtered, cask strength of 45.5, so very low. Which one are you grabbing of the barrel to bottle? I was tasting, I think when you asked that, was the Port Dundas and sherry. So Tormore, great fruit-forward style. Some fun kind of maltiness behind it. A little of that like plastery thing. Not into the like painty stuff, but a little bit of that earthy, plastery character, and big sort of peachy fruit. It's weird to see something this low proof at this age. So you think very, very humid warehousing here. Super soft and open. Great fruit up front. A little bit of fudge, chocolate, those darker maltier flavors. This is going to be a sleeper. Nobody like really pays attention to. Someone called, and we're back now. And it's just really fun, good whiskey. It's not going to be as light as the other 3. There's good texture here. No off flavors at all. That funny plastery thing I kind of like. Maybe it'll put some people off, but it's really, really tasty. Next is Glen Keith. Oh no, I'm not going to do the Glen Keith. I'm apparently very popular. Someone keeps calling me. So here we go on the Breval. This is a distillery, also a relatively young distillery, American bourbon barrel. So you figure that usually means first fill. The 20th of December, 1994. This we don't see a lot of. They call it Breval here, but the other name for it is Braes of Glenlivet. They don't use that any longer. For obvious reasons. 22 years, 55.6 here. Oh, this is very pretty. Floral, honeysuckle, some citrus fruit, more on the pears, apples. These are very, very pretty whiskeys. Yeah. This guy won't let me go. Okay. A little bit of water, see what happens at that high proof. I don't think the Tormore needs it. I didn't try it with water, but... yes. Very pretty. A little more citrus now, quite crystalline. Malty. That's a great little whiskey. Again, these are line price, $100. Sorry, 110. But for, you know, stuff of this quality and age. On to, I'm going to do the Glen Grant next. The Glen Grant, 3 22-year-olds, a 24-year-old. Glen Grant, which we just sent an email out on. This was distilled on July the 26th of 1995. It is 53.9% alcohol, and that went to American oak barrels, so that's bourbon. The Lechig was fantastic. The whole line is really high quality. I think it's interesting, when you have these small batch versus single barrel, you have a lot more opportunity to sort of play around, maybe selecting the 3 or 4 that you like better in a batch, and then, using the others for blending or what have you. They're a medium-sized blender. Oh, the Glen Grant is very pretty. Soft orchard fruit. Less of the maltiness than the Bravel has. A little bit of citrus again here, but not as much. Or maybe some orange peel. Very summery, very fresh. A little bit of vanilla. I think I wrote that I didn't like this as much with water in my notes, so just added water, and of course I don't like it as much. It loses a bit of the pungency. Usually adding water opens a whiskey. Here it kind of, I think, levels it out in a way that I prefer not to have it. I want a bit of that punchy fruit that the cast strength version gets. Still tastes great though. Maybe the palate feels pretty weighty with a little water, but you lose that intensity on the nose. Now on to Glen Keith. This is an interesting distillery. Was mothballed until relatively recently. 24-year-old Glen Keith for $110. I mean, that's such a stellar deal. It was built literally right next to Strathyla. In fact, I believe the spirit was pumped into the Strathyla distillery area for blending purposes, and they did some funny experiments at Glen Keith. I believe there was a period where they were, or at least some experiments where they were maybe fermenting with peaty water, very peaty water, and seeing how that affected the whiskeys. Hey, Kyle's here. Hell yeah. Love Kyle. Kyle wants to come online. Next time, Kyle. So this has more herbal quality than the others. 55.6. This is in a dump hogshead. A dump hogshead is an interesting term. I imagine they're talking about a dumpy so like a extra large hoggy is what I think they mean. Sort of like a hoggy punchin, kind of super fat hogshead. So instead of the normal 250 liters, we're talking 300-ish liters. An odd size. Still some fruit back there, but yeah, lots of candied citrus on the palate. That sort of bouquet of fresh herbs. Very pretty maltiness, like a crystal malt on the palate, on the nose. I think some water will help this one quite a bit. I get a little wild with it. Yeah, that opens up more of that lemon peel. I love lemon zestiness on the nose in a good Scotch. Still a bit of that herbal backbone. Bit of herbs. And that water really expands the palate there. Good texture, great sweetness to balance out that herbal side. Just stellar whiskeys. All 4 very classic Speyside styles in a lot of ways, but distinct, and I think shows you the distillery character very clearly next to each other. Killer values, no doubt. Boom. The Moonrose, Bravel, Glen Keith, Tormore, and Glen Grant, just cracking killer values. KL exclusives in California. You'll see them back east for just about twice the price, maybe. So yeah, pretty fun session today, guys. Really killed it. We tasted through 3 single grains from barrel to bottle. 2 Invergordon, 29 years, and a 21-year-old Port Dundas in heavy sherry. If you want to see my tasting notes, come back and rewatch on the IGTV later. We also tasted the wonderful Tweeddale whiskeys, the Evolution 28-year and the 2 single grains, peated single grain, some really wild stuff. So do have a look at my notes on those. We'll hopefully be emailing those in the coming days. And quick little session, power through some real gems here. Not focus too much on the Spirits Journal these days, but we'll definitely have this on the IG, doing some emails and what have you. Any more Elijah Craig B 520? Praying, yes, there should be plenty. The big issue, new distributor who is treating it like it's, Pappy Van Winkle. So where we used to get, 50 cases at a time, we're getting 3 bottles at a time. They are on the Spirits Journal? Great. I'm glad someone's posting those. Thank you. Mr. or Miss Mosley, Mr. B. Mosley. These are on the Spirits Journal. News to me, but it's great news. B520, the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is going to be a tight one. I don't know if we'll have the era of available Elijah Craig Barrel Proof any longer. I'm not sure what they're doing with stocks, but they're now treating them as highly allocated, whereas they used to assort for the allocated products. I don't know. Email Heaven Hill if you want. Johnny has a question about the Perfect Fifths, new upstart independent bottler. It's hey, if you wanna try some really expensive, really rare whiskeys, try the Perfect Fifth. I mean, fifths, they're definitely high quality. You can see the Jim Murray reviews. They're extremely expensive, extremely rare offerings. It's not going to be for everybody, obviously, but we're putting them out there, see if people want it, and go for it. Highland Park 12, man, that's Mr. Yaz Speed or Miss. I don't mean to gender you. Highland Park 12 European Oak on the fence. Convince me. Well, listen, it's going to be sold out in a matter of days, so I don't need to convince you. But if you want a literal sherry hydrogen bomb in your mouth, then that's the one to go for. Dark, hardcore, powerful oak. That European oak really comes through, and so you have this pretty rare character. Very few of the IBs are to this level. But you have to want that big oak bomb, and I can barely drink that whiskey straight out of the bottle. I think it really demands a careful addition of water, and once you hit that place for you, it's a really special whiskey. But don't wait too long on it, because I think we had 300 bottles and now we have 20 or so. So just heads up on that. Any other questions before we jet, guys? I'm here for you. No? Yeah, Dave Grady, I'm very sorry about the ECBP. It's unfortunate. All I can say is, ping Heaven Hill, let them know we want it. I don't know. Smoke Wagon, you're the second guy to ask about Smoke Wagon. Same deal. Waiting on the distillery to bottle those up and get them out here. Things are moving slower than ever because of the old, COVID thing. So it is awesome. Yes, it is pretty awesome. The 10-year is awesome too. If you want to do the other side of Highland Park, more of that peaty Orkney peat, that is delicious too. A little cheaper. Of course, those distillery bottled single casks you're always going to pay a premium. Smoke Wagon, Alex Q Brown has asked about our Smoke Wagon picks. They were supposed to be here before the end of July. That doesn't seem realistic. But they're picked, so we're waiting on that, the uncut and unfiltered. We have one, a Mr. Brett Colombo, the illustrious Brett Colombo, is asking about our Old Forester barrel picks. Those will be available. We were offered one. It will be cast strength. It is delicious. We picked it on Zoom with Jackie, and it was awesome. Encantada's top pick of the ones in stock. I mean, I'm partial to the La Fresh. The La Fresh is just so stupendous for the price. 30-year-old from the Grand Cru Village. They won't tell us who it is, but I think it's a producer I've been trying to get into the States for years, that I won't name publicly, and they won't sell to us. They're always making excuses, so I believe they have some sort of exclusivity within Cantata, or maybe they just feel it's easier to sell to them than to bother bottling on their own, which I think for some of these guys who maybe have other businesses, the biggest pain about Armagnac is actually having to put it in the bottle. I'd check out the La Fresh. Of course, Loose Pibus is spectacularly good. It doesn't have the value proposition that the La Fresh, I think, offers. But it's a good cask. We're still getting good quality stuff from the Loose Pibus stocks for now, thank God. Otherwise, those are the two. The very old one is gorgeous too, but it's a very different style. The Sablé, not new oak, much more ethereal. So if you want that big sort of oak forward Armagnac, definitely go for the La Fresh. That barrel, I can't believe it's still here. I don't know why it hasn't clicked with people. But also, Armagnac is one of those complicated categories. Some things just fly off, and other things, just kind of take a little while. So, yeah, do check that one out, and hopefully there'll be there's a bunch of new Armagnac coming from Charles Neal. We have a single barrel of Monty, 20-year-old Monty coming from Doudignan. That's cask strength, one of the few cask strength barrels of cognac we've ever bottled. And what else? Domaine Jambon, which we haven't had in 5 years. We're coming back. They have a 30-year-old big Rancio leathery Armagnac for like $89.99. I mean, it's nuts. It's so affordable. So keep an eye out for those, and a bunch of other stuff. Some new Calvados. So there we go. How's the Icarus for someone new to brandy? I think it's a good place to be for someone new. It's a very esoteric product. This is young-ish Germain Robin pot still, bottled by our good friend Kurt Sharon up in Oxnard. I think at the price we're putting it at, they're really fabulous deals. It's easy drinking, no non-adulterated, approachable, high quality California brandy. Pinot Noir from I believe it was a Roeder Estate, distilled on the Lees. It's very, very good quality, young-ish California brandy. So I definitely recommend it at the price that we're putting it out at. I mean, I was selling it when it was $90, and I probably would say at that price it's a little more difficult, but just because of what we expect from other producers in the category. But at the current price, it's a really fun whiskey, bit esoteric, brandy, but definitely worth a look for sure. Okay. Not gone yet. I'm still here. Any final thoughts, questions? Thanks so much for coming out, guys. This will be up on IG if you want to go back and look at my tasting impressions of these various whiskeys. And we'll be back next week with some more stuff to drink. I think it's been a couple of sessions since I've done mezcal, so I'll probably head back that way because I drink a lot of mezcal, and that's what I like to drink during the day. Enjoy yourselves. Everybody be super safe. Stay at home and stuff, and we'll see you next week. Yeah, next Tuesday. I think it's gonna be Tuesday. All right. Cheers. Bye.